Hi, welcome to yet another DIY workshop channel. Appropriately named channel. I like to dabble in a lot of different things, from woodworking to working on cars to metalworking. In this video, I want to show you what I've made. It's a wooden hot tub designed in a traditional way. I've taken the design from a tub that was made over 100 years ago, and it is put together in such a way that it has no tongue and groove, has no glue or screws. It's coopered in such a way that it comes together just by the dimensions and the angles, and it makes it a very watertight wooden tub. So I just want you to see the end product so you don't have to wait till the end of the video, and want you to see how well it does come together, so we can get on with how this came together, and hope you enjoy the video. Alright, well, today I want to start a project that I've been meaning to get around to. I had a hot tub that I had made from a tank from my dad's plant, where they made shellac in the tank. It was built over 100 years ago, and I had to clean it up, and about 30 years ago I made a hot tub out of it. Not a jacuzzi, but it had jets and had a bubbler. More like a soaking tank that you might traditionally think of, but with all the jets and benches inside. Through the years of sitting outside and some time where it sat dry, it ended up dry rotting, and I felt very bad about that. So now I'm getting around to where I'm going to rebuild it very much like it was before. The original tank was made from Cypress. We usually think of hot tubs being made out of redwood. This tank was made out of Cypress, which is known for being rot resistant and bug resistant, and it also is very good at swelling up and sealing. So the way that the tank is coopered, if you want to call it coopering, you will have tight fitting staves, but there will be small gaps, and when the wood gets wet, it swells and then it closes up the gaps. So I wanted to use Cypress. I was able to source some Cypress from a place in Florida, and it's not cheap. It wasn't too expensive. Of course, I couldn't source it locally. We don't have Cypress here in Kentucky, but I'm going to use Cypress. It's a little bit thinner than the original tank. This piece right here is the base of the original tank. It's a little over 2 inches thick. It's still in very good shape. In fact, when I separated these large slabs, the pencil marks from the original tank builder looked like they were been scribed yesterday. So what I'm using is going to be 1.5 inches, basically 2x4s, 1.5 by 3.5. They were pre-cut. It was the easiest way to order it, and it will save me some work. So the sides are going to be 4 feet. The diameter is approximately 5 feet. But the way that this is put together, it's all about mathematics. Get the diameter of the base, pi times r squared, then you get the circumference, then you figure out the number of staves from the width of the staves, and then there'll be an angle cut into it, and the angle going all the way around will hopefully be nice and tight. I'm not going to tongue and groove it. The original tank wasn't cut tongue and groove, and I want to see if this works. I think it will. So I'll get started by building the base and then getting the final dimensions, and I want everything to fit the original dimensions because I'll be using the iron hoops that were around the original. So So I already have those hoops, and I want to reuse them, so I want to make it the same size as the original hot tub. I did a quarter scale mock-up just to see if everything would fit together, and it seemed to work pretty well. I'll probably have to tweak the circumference of the base in order. I'd like to come up with an even number of staves. I don't want to have a half stave, so I'll probably tweak it if I have to. Basically get started on it, and we'll see how it goes. This is my first video. I really wanted to kind of put together a video if anyone was interested in doing this themselves. Makes it a little harder because I had to clean up the shop. So, all right, I'll get started. Okay, so I've got all the boards marked up, laid out. Got some bigger pieces in the middle. Tried to save as much wood on the ends. So now, like the original, I'm going to dowel joint these together, which I've always had problems doing, lining up the dowels. I've used the pins. I've used jigs. I'm actually going to use a little bit of a jig that I made, and I'm going to use my vertical mill. I got rid of my drill press when I got my vertical mill. It's a great drill press. I use it for woodworking quite a bit, and I can set the stops, and I can move things around, knowing that the original settings stay in place. But that being said, this is wood, and wood always has a little bit of a curvature to it, and so far so good. But I'm going to continue down with the dowels. I've got 2-inch oak dowels, and I'm going to successively join this together. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so I've gotten all the base pieces together using the dowels. I'm not using any glue at all. Seems like everything's tight enough that I can work with it. There's no need for glue anywhere on this project, as long as it's put together properly. Should be watertight. And actually glue would maybe hamper the wood from absorbing water and swelling, so I don't want to use any glue. Anyways, I've got this thing fairly flat. Looks like it should work all right. So the next step is to figure out the diameter, the circumference of the base. I said before, I'm working within the parameters of these iron hoops that I have. So I came up with the math for what I need, and you know, hopefully I took into account everything: the width of the staves, the number of staves. It looks like I'm going to come up with an even number of 50 staves. So then 360 degrees divided by 50 is about 7 degrees, which will ultimately be the angle that I cut on the staves. So that's the math behind it. And you know, this isn't the first one I ever built, so the math should be good. So the next step will be to lay it out a little bit, to do the cutting. And to do the cutting, I'm going to use my router. I've got a long straight bit, and I'll anchor it in the center, and I'll be using this router jig that I made to just follow it around. I'll probably just take a small depth of cut at first and then work on down. So we'll catch that on video, and enough of my talking about it. We'll go ahead and do it. Okay, well, that worked out pretty good. It actually turned out perfect as far as circle goes. I haven't been doing woodworking much lately. Couldn't remember which way the router is supposed to go. So I went counterclockwise. It seemed to work okay. I started clockwise. I don't even know if it makes a difference. But there it is. It's perfectly round. I only had a little bit, maybe a 1/4 inch to spare on both ends, so I got a little nervous there. But my circle cutting jig that I made seemed to work out pretty well. Now I just have to clean up all the dust. All right. All right, so next I'm gonna cut a couple 3 cleats for the bottom. I'm just going to use pressure treated wood for this. So this will be what the base actually sits on, and it also will give me the length of the staves. I want the staves to be the same basic height as the cleats. And as I move this base around, it'll all be more secure. So, all right, I'm going to go and cut that. Next I'm going to screw down the cleats, and I'm going to use stainless steel hardware. This will be the only screws in the entire assembly. So stainless steel, obviously, for longevity. The previous tank that was 100 years old didn't have stainless steel, but Good screws back then. Alright, that about does it for the base. Next comes the staves, and I'm going to reconfigure the sawhorses so I can lift this up a little bit without anything sticking out, so I can attach the staves with the base upside down, and that way it makes it a little easier. You don't have gravity fighting you. So the next time you see this, it'll still be in this position, but it'll be a little higher, and then we'll start working on the staves. Okay, that seemed to work out pretty well, pretty stable. Like I said, the tub is being built upside down, just for convenience of assembly. So this will be the stave. It's a 4-foot height. I will be cutting a dado in here, 1.5 inches to match this, about 1/2 inch deep, and then these will hang going all the way around. So you can see that that's a little bit easier than trying to do it upright. I've got 50 of these things, then I'll strap them down. Question is, how will I get it off of the sawhorses when I'm done? That'll be a challenge. Okay, time to work on the staves and make everything come together and watertight. So, like I made a reference to before, it's all about the math and the size and the number of staves and whatnot. So, what I have here is I made just kind of a mock-up using 2x4s. So these have rounded ends on them like a normal dimensional lumber, whereas the wood that I'm making out of, the Cypress, has nice sharp edges on it. But this gives me a good idea of how it's going to go together. I didn't want to use Cypress for it. I just used some scrap 2x4. So I'm able to take a final measurement with my mock-up here. Diameter is 57.5 inches, which is good. That's what my target was, because the iron hoops that go around it, it's going to be spot on for 57.5 inches. So 57.5 inch diameter divided by 2, it gives you your radius of 28.75, 28 3/4 inches. So pi r squared will give us our circumference, which is 180 inches basically. So it's 180 inches around, and I can take the nominal thickness or width of the stave, which is 3.5 inches, and divide that. 180 divided by 3.5 gives me, unfortunately, 51.5 staves. I may work that out later on. I don't know. I don't want any half staves. I've grooved it. I did a dado cut of 1/2 inch on the staves, which is good enough, stout enough. But if I wanted to make it a little tighter, which I can't make it bigger, you know, you can't put wood back, I could cut this groove a little bit deeper, or I may cut the radius or the circumference down a little bit again with the router. I'd really like to not have any half staves, but we'll see how that goes. So you take the number of, or the width of the staves, which is 3.5 inches. So you then, the circumference divided by 3.5 inches, it tells me that I will have 51.5 staves. So you take that number, 51.5, divided by 360, and that is 7. That 7 is critical. That is going to be 7 degrees of cut on one side of the stave. So just one side of the stave is going to be cut at 7 inches. And when it comes together, that's how you get them all to draw tight. At 7 degrees, they pretty much have. I actually started at 6 degrees and I did a test fit. It was pretty good. I went to 7 degrees. It's nice and tight, and that's what the math is saying, so I'm going to go with the 7 degrees. Alright, I'll give a little close-up of how it's coming together, and then it's on to cutting the actual staves. Okay, I got pre-cut lumber, but there's a slight variation in length, so I made this little jig. I'm going to take advantage of the dadoed notch, so I put a stop on the end of this board, this sacrificial board. I'm going to line up the dado to that and chop it off. So they all should come out pretty much the same length. No big deal. Might do some grinding afterwards on the top just to get it level, but that's what I'm going to do. Okay, now it's time to set the blade to 7 degrees. Just going to go with the markings on the saw. Alright, so now the blade tilt is at 7. Okay, I guess the worst case scenario of my expectations has occurred. Put all the staves on there and I've got a gap about ½ an inch. I've already decided what I'm going to do. I'm going to take everything apart and I'm just going to shave a little bit off of the circumference with the router again. If it had turned out where it was a little bit over, just a ½ inch over, I would have cut the ½ inch off. I tried to source 2x6s and I waited for 2x6s and I wasn't able to get any. I guess that could be another option. I could get some 2x6s and just put a 4-inch board in there. I don't have any 2x6s in Cypress, so this has gone pretty quickly. I'm gonna take it all apart, put it all back together again. The only cutting I'm gonna do is, like I said, I'm gonna use the jig and I'm gonna cut the circumference down just a little bit. I think I kind of measured it a little bit fat because you can always take wood off, but you can't put it back on. So that's what I'm gonna do. All right. Okay, I should have gotten it on video, but I ended up disassembling the whole thing, running the router around it. Took maybe 3/16 off, and I kind of thought it was too much, and I had already committed myself. So, or I should say I was already committed. I put it all back together again, and I should have gotten on video tapping in the last stave. It was very gratifying. It went in perfect. I had shaved a little bit off twice, and then I tapped it in. Everything came in tight and exactly the way I wanted it. No small staves. Not that anybody would have noticed. I would have noticed. So, yep, now it's all together, and the next step is I'm going to put one of the iron hoops on. I'll probably do that off camera. I'm going to get my wife to help me. So the next shot, hopefully the hoop will be on, and maybe a couple straps. Okay, well, everything turned out really well. Everything came together. I got the iron hoops on it. and got everything tightened up, and it's definitely sturdy. Very little gaps. Maybe a couple tap here and there for a few of the slats, but really I think it'll hold water as it is, and then once it swells up, it should be watertight, no doubt. I did start applying some tung oil on it on the bottom, because the next step then will be to get a couple guys to help me, and we'll flip it right side up and then go from there. All right. I reclaimed some of the wood from the old tub. Here's an example of a piece from the base. This one, too many nails in it, but the other staves and base pieces I was able to go through with a metal detector, pull the nails, and clean up an edge, and then run it through my planer, which takes a lot of work. So I did it off camera. It's just a process of planing wood. It's not very exciting, but I was able to then source that or reclaim that to build the benches, which I'm very happy with the way it's come out. So I did a 6-sided design where the reclaimed wood, with its nice grain, will be supported by those little angle brackets. But all around, I like the way it's turned out. I like it a lot. Do a couple little finishing touches. I believe I'm going to router this edge just to soften it up a little bit. But it's really coming together, and the big step next will be to plumb it, which it's not really hard. It's more a matter of finding the right jets, finding the right heater. I have some pumps that I may or may not rebuild, and we'll get this thing all together. Hopefully have a final shot of it.